Hi, everyone. This is Catherine, the content manager here at Noah Webster Educational Foundation, and I will be guest hosting this episode of the podcast. And I would love to introduce the lovely ladies, Lauren Bowen and Eloise Smith. These ladies are part of the Freedom Foundation, which recently hosted a conference in Denver called a Teacher Freedom Conference. And its purpose was to give teachers the opportunity to learn how they can stand up for themselves against some of the leftist ideas that are coming out of unions like the AFT and the NEA. And so, ladies, I am so delighted to meet both of you today and to have you here with us. It's a pleasure. And I would love to get to know you a little bit more. So can you tell me a little bit about yourselves and what led you to the Freedom Foundation and starting this conference in the first place? Because I'm sure that was a little bit of a journey.
Sure. Catherine, it's a genuine pleasure. I just can't thank you enough for having me a part of this today. I worked in state government for 7 years on a project called the Ohio Checkbook, and I would go to hundreds of school board meetings across the state. And it was amazing to me the lack of transparency I observed for both parents and teachers and the general taxpayer, who of course is a genuine stakeholder in that district. And we were simply asking them, as a part of this project, to publish their expenditures online so that everyone could understand how that hard-earned money the taxpayers sacrifice to sustain that school district, how that money was being spent. And the lack of response and eagerness to embrace this tool for the public good and the parents' good really alarmed me. And I got really concerned. So fast forward to COVID, matters just deteriorated. Let's face it, school systems were not serving the best interests of students and parents. I already knew there was a lack of transparency pre-COVID because of my work on that project, and I just simply had enough. And one day, it would happen to be that the good Lord helped me stumble upon a LinkedIn posting about the Freedom Foundation. And one of the main points of the job posting was government accountability. And I said, that's all I've ever wanted. So I applied, and I told my husband it was my dream job. And I was just anxiously hoping it would work out. So 3 years later, almost 3 years later, here I am.
Yeah, that's so awesome that, you had this journey and this need and you were able to find something. And then, a lot of people see needs, but they don't choose to make a difference. So it's quite admirable that you saw a need and you chose to do something about it despite the backlash and even the fight to get heard. So amazing. All right. And what about you, Eloise? Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm the director of teacher engagement for the Freedom Foundation. And my job was to run the conference. This kind of evolved just in the last year was really the inception of it. And the Freedom Foundation only hired me last November, so I'm pretty new to this scene. But they hired me because I was a former teacher. I've been in education reform for a number of years now, working with Young America's Foundation, and now, of course, the Freedom Foundation. There's obviously a need for education reform to fix the very broken system. But conservatives and the right in general, I think, have a tendency to just want to wash their hands of public education and say, let's start over, let's scrap the system and do homeschool or focus on school choice. And while those things are great and definitely needed, I absolutely believe in those. 90% of all of our students in America go to a public school. And so we can't give up on them. We can't walk away and just cede that fight to the left and say, well, guess they're going to trans all those kids, but they're not going to trans the homeschoolers. That's just not a long-term solution for the health of our country.
Absolutely not. I mean, whether we like it or not, that's where the majority of kids are, and we need to step up to the plate and reach that. So again, one of the reasons we wanted you on here, because we do want to support people that are going out there and fighting for our public school students. So could you just expound on, like, as a teacher, maybe what you saw and what led you to moving from that into working for the Freedom Foundation?
Yeah, so I taught at a school in Colorado Springs. It was in the poorest part of town next to the airport. 70% of my students lived in the trailer park across the street, actually. Really, really poor area. And there's just not a lot of parental and care for their students. They didn't care about school. Education is the best way to get ahead in life. That's been proven over and over again. The best way to break out of poverty is through education and through knowledge. And so equipping our students is really important. But if parents don't care and the teachers don't care, then there's not a lot that can be done. So I then left that school and taught at a charter school, which had a totally different philosophy. Parents were very involved. Teachers held students accountable. And I just saw the difference between a government-run school and a parent-led school. And it said so much. It said so much about the population. It said so much about the future of America in a lot of ways. And, I was teaching 7th grade at both schools. The kids shouldn't have been that different. But parental involvement really matters, and hiring the right teachers really matters. Getting the right people in the classroom is so, so, so important. And that's why I'm really passionate about this union issue, because the unions are really set on keeping bad teachers in their classroom and kicking out the good ones. They don't reward the good ones. They give tenure to the ones that are literally lemons, and will shuffle them around districts. They'll ensure that those teachers who are predators or just are lazy, they don't want to be teachers, they don't care about their job, they can never get fired. In California, it costs about $3 million to fire a teacher that's in the union. Well, it's just easier. Yeah, it's easier than to just keep the teacher because it's so expensive. They estimate that in California, there's 85,000 teachers. About 15% of them are inadequate and should be fired. Well, it's too expensive to fire them. And that's because of the unions. And that's the reason that there's like 9% of students who graduate in San Francisco at reading and writing proficiencies. It's keeping these bad teachers in place that's harming our students in the long run.
Well, those are some very alarming statistics for sure. And, a problem is bad, but hearing you here, being able to say that is, scary. So how does, and I guess this is a question for you both, how does the Freedom Foundation, and particularly, the work that you do, how does that step in and help with this problem, especially with the teachers unions and getting parental engagement?
Honestly, we're telling teachers the honest truth about where their money goes. When they spend $70 to $100 a month, and some states even a lot more than that. In Ohio, that's the average. That money is going to politics. I did an analysis using federal reports, and I think the NEA last year spent a little over $13 on every member for workplace representation in the entire year of 2022. So if that doesn't tell you where the priorities of the teachers are for the NEA and the state level unions, I don't know what does. To spend that money and only get that level of representation in your workplace is not the point of a union. So when we tell teachers that, regardless of their political attachments or leanings, they want to leave the union.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to be somewhere where they're representing you and it's a partnership, and especially if you're paying that much money. I mean, that's just a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'll add to that. In 2021, the NEA collected $374 million in dues money from teachers around the country. That's so much money. And teachers, like my first job teaching, I made $28,000. If 1,100 of that was going to the union, I luckily was in a right to work state that I didn't have to join the union. But that's a lot of money to be taken out of very little money. So, and that's the teacher story everywhere. That's not just unique to Colorado. That's teacher story everywhere. So the NEA made $374 million from their constituents in 2021. only 9% of all of that money was spent representing teachers, which is the entire reason that they exist, the entire reason that they collect money. And they spent over 200 million of that on politics, getting people elected, and spending it on giving it to BLM, giving it to Planned Parenthood, groups that fundamentally do not stand for the same things that most teachers stand for. Most teachers are not interested in this woke ideology. They really just care about like traditional American values, and they want to raise the next upright citizenry. And being involved with SEL, DEI stuff, that's not doing that.
Definitely. I've had many, many friends in education over the years, and regardless of which side of the aisle they were on, I think they would all agree that at the end of the day, education and proficient reading levels, proficient math skills was ultimately what they wanted. And, if politics came, then it did, and maybe they had some views on ideology, but that was always second, regardless of which side of the aisle they were on. So it's a very valid point. So speak to how you got from this background, right? And then had this idea for a conference, and not just a conference, but a conference that would sponsor teachers that would be able to help them, get there in the first place. Because like you said, unfortunately, we do not pay teachers hardly anything in this country.
Yeah. So they hired me with this goal in mind, thinking that this conference is going to be for teachers, and so it needs to be run by a teacher. I am familiar with teacher lingo. I'm familiar with the needs in the classroom. And so it was a pretty unique opportunity that just landed in my lap. And the goal of the conference, like you said, was to bring teachers together from all across the country. And that meant we had to pay their way because teachers do not make very much money. So an $800 plane ticket was obviously not going to be realistic for the kinds of teachers that we wanted to attend. So we were really lucky. We got we got 200 teachers from 26 different states, including 2 other countries. We had a teacher show up from Canada and a couple of teachers from Australia. We did have a teacher who was coming from the UK as well, but she had to drop out literally 3 days before, which was unfortunate. So really cool opportunity. This is clearly an issue that's not just national. It's not just happening in all 50 of our states, but it's happening across the globe. So unfortunately, this wokeism, this stealing people's money out of paychecks is not unique to the United States. But the good news is, if it's happening elsewhere, there's been solutions that people have thought of elsewhere, and so we can collaborate with those people as well.
Yeah. Lauren, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think, too, one of the main ideas behind us organizing this and getting these teachers under one roof is because they feel so alone. I just talk to teachers all day because of the nature of my work and helping to get teachers out of unions. And we have some really honest conversations together, which is a huge blessing. It's so nice to be able to hear from them and get their honest feedback. And almost every one of them mentions, I feel so alone. And it's so odd because unions are supposed to be about camaraderie. You'll oftentimes hear people talk about unions in the context of a brotherhood. Maybe not so much in the school systems, but if you're talking about the electric unions or the carpenters unions, that those union members say, well, I'm part of a brotherhood. So the concept of unions were always designed to be about forming these really close bonds with your coworkers. And so how can teachers that are a part of these quote unquote strong unions feel so alone all the time? And that's really heartbreaking for us to hear at the Freedom Foundation, because somebody who's doing such noble work and standing up for families and standing up for kids and going back to the future for America, how can we let them be lonely? So I think that's what meant so much to us, is that we could get them together for meals, for some fun, for some lighthearted conversation in Denver. And I think I didn't hear one teacher say that they would go home and not keep up with the people they met. That was a very rewarding part of the conference. And to your question, that was the point of the conference, or a main point.
Yeah, and that's such a wonderful main point, is just to build that camaraderie and give them that framework that unfortunately, a union should be, at least according to the original definition of a union, should be doing, right? It was to, when unions originated, it was to stand together and to fight for better circumstances and to really support each other. Back, not to be a history nerd, but they were started before there were things like retirement benefits and workers' comp. And so it really was to take care of each other. So to hear that, like, many teachers are experiencing the opposite is just so incredibly heartbreaking. So now that we've talked, I guess, about getting them there and the camaraderie, can you speak a little bit and give our audience just a taste of some of the topics that were discussed, some of the maybe exciting incidents that occurred? Just give them a little taste for this conference, and then we'll talk later about how maybe they can sign up for next year.
I don't know where to start on that one, Catherine. That's really hard because there just wasn't a dull moment the whole 3 days where we were together. It was one of those experiences where I came home on Thursday morning and I said, I told myself, how did we fit so many positive things, so much good information into 3 days? So I am going to honestly have a really hard time answering that question about my favorite speaker or the favorite thing that I learned while I was there, because even though I work at the Freedom Foundation, I genuinely did learn things from this conference that we hosted. I would say that one of the biggest highlights for me was we had this mom come and talk at a breakfast session about her experience of being sued by the teachers union because all she wanted was transparency in the curriculum at her school. She went to the administrators and she genuinely asked, what content is my kindergartner going to be exposed to this year? I'm just a genuinely curious parent. I think a lot of times schools think, well, you're just being nosy or you're trying to catch us doing something wrong. I think this mom just genuinely, or the way she framed it, she's just like, well, if I know what my kid is learning at school, then I can strengthen what we do at home as, in-house activities to complement that curriculum that she's exposed to day in and day out. Well, because the administrators were so cynical and suspect of her asking about this, they got very paranoid and just outright refused her and made her submit thousands of public records requests that went unanswered. And finally, the teachers union recognized it as quote unquote harassment on her behalf and organized to sue her. And I think it really shocked a lot of people in that room, because I don't think some of those teachers realize the nemesis that teachers unions are in pitting educators against parents. I kind of think they thought, well, I'm in the classroom every day. I'm a genuine ally of these parents. I do everything I can to serve them and their young ones. And I just think it was a rude awakening for them. And sometimes you do need that rude awakening, because there was a teacher that stood up during question and answer time and she's like, I just don't understand how teachers couldn't be your ally through all of this, and how we were distanced. The teachers in that district were distanced from her in providing her the information that she wanted. I mean, it's just shocking to hear some of these stories. So that was probably a big highlight for me.
Yeah, that's an absolutely heartbreaking story, but it really does highlight the disconnect, because at least where I'm from, probably, a decade ago, that could have been a very simple conversation between parent and teacher. Hey, what's my kid learning? Oh, well, they just learned their ABCs. And it would have been a really sweet conversation, not a lawsuit. So that is absolutely heartbreaking, but I think speaks to the time that we live in.
Right, Catherine.
Yeah, some other topics that we covered. We had very full days, very full days. So we started with Mark Janis, who is the guy behind the Supreme Court case that allowed people to opt out of union, public employees to opt out of unions in all 50 states and not be required to pay dues. And so it was kind of like meeting a huge celebrity for a lot of these public workers, for these teachers, to see a guy who went all the way to the Supreme Court and won, fighting for their First Amendment rights. Pretty special. We also had a surprise guest in Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos. She was able to join us virtually on the opening night. Unfortunately, just didn't work out to have her come in person, maybe next year. But she was wonderful. She talked about school choice and the importance of it, and why public school teachers should actually be excited about school choice, that it really is all it's going to do is reaffirm that they're good teachers. Bad teachers should be scared of school choice because it opens up the free market, of course, but good teachers should be thrilled by it because it actually means more opportunity for them. And also higher pay, which is great. Everybody wants higher pay. We had Ryan Walters, who is the superintendent of the state of Oklahoma. He is a fiery, passionate dude. If you have not seen him speak, I encourage you to go look him up on YouTube. He's wonderful. He was probably everyone's favorite speaker, honestly. He kicked things off for us on Monday night and just had a lot of words of encouragement for how to battle these unions. He's been taking it on the chin over and over again in Oklahoma. And so to see someone that's willing to stand up for teachers and do right by teachers, he's started a program there that literally you can triple your pay in Oklahoma up to like $80,000 and then double it based on some incentive programs that he's built in. So he's really fighting for teachers, which means he's fighting hard against the teachers unions, unfortunately, because they are, of course, as we've already said, not fighting for teachers. And kind of on that point, we had another session that was about where our dues money goes. We could follow it exactly, how much of your money that you pay every month actually stays in your local versus goes to the state versus goes to the national. And we talked about lies versus the truth the union tells, talking about liability insurance and the scare tactics that unions use around those things. They say that if you get sued by the school or sued by a parent, you're not going to have any protection. Well, that's a great lie that the union has sold to all of these teachers. So they actually have the policy, the insurance policy that you are paying $1,100 a month for, which is a very expensive insurance policy, is actually not even in the teacher's name. It's in the union's name. So the union gets to decide, oh, yeah, we don't like your case. We're not going to take it up. Or actually, yeah, that sounds like something we will defend. And there's been numerous cases recently coming out of specifically Southern California where teachers have been in the union. They've been lifelong union members, and they get sued either for the vaccine or because they didn't follow the district's policy and not telling parents that their student was being transitioned behind their back in their school. And so they've been fired. Well, the unions decided not to stand up for those teachers. They've sided with the district, which is just insanity. But if you use an alternative like Association of American Educators or Christian Educators, there's also some local state groups that do similar things. You can get double the amount of liability insurance, $2 million instead of $1 million, for $230 a year, not a month, just a year. So it's literally 20% of what you'd be paying for union dues for double the amount of liability insurance, and it's in your name. So it's really important that teachers know about this sort of resource. The unions don't want them to know about this resource, but when teachers know about it, they have no use for the union anymore. So it was a lot of really good information sessions like that. We were just equipping teachers to go back to their campuses and spread that news that, hey, the best way to take out like this progressive ideology is to not pay union dues, and you can still have liability insurance through that.
Yep. Actually, the last 2 weeks, I've been thinking very deeply about how to keep inspiring these teachers and keep equipping them and keeping them empowered, so they don't fall back into the same routines of feeling alone and isolated when they get back into the classroom this fall. And actually, the conference was so positive and cultivated so much warmth and friendship that following up with these teachers has been, honestly, after the conference, incredibly easy. It feels like we've known each other for so long when we just met 2 weeks ago. And so that makes it very easy when you have that level of trust to come up with a plan of how they can help us get teachers out of the union when they get back into the classroom, and how they can be a proponent of the truth and stand in the gap. And I don't think any of them left this conference feeling like they're lacking tools at all. One thing that we are going to do right before some of the Ohio teachers enter back into the classroom is we have a meeting scheduled in Columbus already where 2 or 3 of the attendees of the conference are inviting up to 20 of their friends at someone's house, and we're going to have food and visit, and it's going to be laid back. But the truth of the matter is, I'm coming with materials to have them reconsider their union membership for next year. And so the idea is that those 20 people will come and be impressed by their coworkers and the group of people there, and want to go to their friends at the school that they know are like-minded and get them out of the union. So this growth of activism and our grassroots approach to this is just going to mean exponential losses for the teachers union.
That's amazing that you are willing to go to where they are and not just bring them to the conference once a year, but be able to go out and meet them where they are and share that information as well. So we've both spoken a lot to leaving the union. Is that what you feel is the best thing for teachers as far as, or the top best thing for teachers as far as protecting themselves and advocating for a better future for themselves?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I think it's an immediate action that all teachers can take that will actually have a snowball effect, because if you're paying $1,100 one year, you're paying $1,100 the next year. And so if you're not paying that, then the next year you're not paying that. So it's just like a snowball effect of your dues. We did an analysis of how much money a teacher would pay into the union by the time they retire if they have a 30-year career, and it's over $40,000. That's a lot of money. And if you decided to put that instead into your retirement every year, $1,100 into your retirement every year, you would be sitting pretty. So it doesn't make any sense to be paying the union this kind of money when you're not getting any sort of benefits back. They're not doing anything for you except for harming our students. Here's a very tangible example of that. Every year, the National Education Association, which is the largest teachers union in the United States, they hold a conference. They hold multiple conferences throughout the year, but their big one always happens in July. Last year, in 2022, they had 6,000 attendees in person, 18 online. Before COVID, they had about 25,000 teachers attending in person. They've got a huge reach, obviously. They're touching a lot of hearts and minds. But at these conferences is when the most radical ideologies are being passed. Last year, they had 110 resolutions that they voted on and passed. Only 4 of them had to do with education. 4 of them. All the rest of them, 106 of them, had to do with social emotional learning, diversity, education, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It had to do with CRT. They literally had a session on how to talk queerness in conservative areas. This is just not what education is about. This is not why people became teachers. People became teachers because they're really passionate about their subject. I was an English teacher and I wanted to talk about literature and have a captive audience. It was great. Being a teacher was wonderful for me. And so they want to share their passion with their students. They want to encourage them to be deeper thinkers and critical thinkers. But that's just not going to happen if you are studying the 1619 project. There's no critical thinking in that.
Yeah, I think, again, I agree with you. Most teachers just want to fix the terrible reading proficiency levels and work on math skills and all the other academic skills, And maybe if we had them all up to 100%, we could start thinking about other things. But when they're so abysmally low, it's kind of hard to swallow that, it's like, what did you say, 106 resolutions that did not address the main problem. That's a lot. So we've spoken a lot about the conference. Is this something that appears to be on the horizon for next quarter or next semester?
It'll be on the horizon next year. We unfortunately are not able to quite do it every quarter yet. It's going to be once a year national conference until we're able to start to draw the numbers of the NEA conferences. When we have 25,000 teachers attending, we'll start to look to do more little ones in between. But next year, you can definitely look for this conference. We're really excited to be able to offer it to teachers and to equip them. On top of all the expenses being paid, we were also able to offer the teachers 12 professional development hours, which helps them keep their licenses, of course. So this isn't just like a fun conference to go network with people. It's still like a working professional conference, which is very exciting.
So where can any teachers or educators that are listening in on this today, where can they go to find information regarding this future conference next year and sign up for updates?
We haven't posted anything on our website quite yet about next year's conference. We're just 2 weeks out from the last one, so we're still kind of getting our bearings. But if you want to be put on the list for next year, you can email me at esmith@freedomfoundation.com, or you can call the Freedom Foundation, go to freedomfoundation.com, sign up for our email list, and we'll make sure that you are included on next year's list when information about that starts going out, which should probably be around October.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So audience, now you know where to go sign up. I know we have some teachers that watch our stuff. And so super excited, especially when I heard that you were on the queue to come on the podcast, because it's like, hooray, we have something to offer teachers. Because while it's a recognized issue, sometimes finding solutions to make their lives better is a difficult and convoluted problem.
Yeah, that's very true. There's a lot of advocacy groups for parents out there, for students, but there's not a lot for teachers. The only one really out there is the union. We want to make sure that all teachers are being heard, all teachers are being represented, and all teachers have a place to go to kind of commiserate with the workplace.
All right. So following up, you're coming off this high of the conference 2 weeks ago. So what's, maybe it has to do with the conference, maybe not, but what's something that you're excited about moving forward? Maybe an upcoming project, maybe a topic, maybe a shift in the political scene. Lauren, you want to answer this one?
Good. I'm most excited about teachers working together and me being able to be a part of what they're doing and their heroic work, and being an advocate for the right things in their districts for families and children, and reprioritizing what goes on in these school systems. And I'm really excited to work with them to rebuke what the teachers' unions are doing to their own careers, to these young people's lives and futures. And before 2018, they had no choice. They could have really disliked the union and strongly disagreed with everything the union was doing. But in order to keep their teaching job, they didn't have a choice. Well, now they do have the choice. And this is a big piece of accountability that has been missing for decades. And now they have the ability to use their voice and their money to say, hey, look, we don't like what you stand for. We don't like what you're doing. We don't like the direction you're taking education, and we don't like the outlook of public school systems and the trajectory that public school systems are on. And enough of us are going to leave the union that it's not possible that the teachers' unions will exist in the form they do now. And that's a very exciting thing, because now the teachers' unions will have to reprioritize workplace representation and go back to what they originally conceptualized to do, which is stand up for teachers and be their true voice. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And to ultimately empower teachers and to improve the state of education is, I think, all of our goals, right? So, Eloise, what about you?
Yeah, pretty similar. I think there was a lot of energy coming out of the conference. Teachers, 96% of them, of the 200 teachers surveyed, said that they would come back and bring at least 3 friends next year. So that's really exciting. That's about to triple the size of our conference pretty immediately. So I think there's a lot of appetite for this. After COVID, parents and teachers alike saw exactly what was happening in the classroom, and they were like, whoa, hold up. This is not what I signed up for. I've had a lot of teachers that I've talked to who started teaching in the 90s, and the classroom is a very different landscape today than it was in the 1990s. Then even just in 2013, when I graduated from high school, it's a very, very different landscape. And I think probably Lauren and Catherine, you guys can both agree and that it looks very, very different than it did. And that's solely due to the unions. They've really decided to push in on this radical agenda. I mean, you can go watch Becky Pringle's speech, the president of the NEA. She just had it last week. It is like Dwight Schrute when he gets his award and he's like, blood alone will move the wheels of time. Like she is going off. It's like insane. It's insane. They're clearly pushing an ideology. They're not pushing education. And so everyone's starting to wake up to this. The whole country's starting to wake up to this. And that's really, really exciting.
Absolutely, it is. So kind of before we wrap up here, let's just pretend that maybe I'm a teacher. I wasn't able to go to your conference, but I want out. So can you give some resources or a couple of kind of next steps where that teacher could go?
Yep. optouttoday.com. There's an interactive map. You choose your state. You have the option of choosing which union you're a part of, whether it be the AFT, which is the American Federation of Teachers. There is a state extension of that. And then there is a state extension of the NEA in almost all of our 50 states. You'll have both of those major teachers unions represented. You choose which union you're a part of, and you are sent paperwork. If you don't have a printer, we send it by mail. And my email is lbowen@freedomfoundation.com. If you really want out of the union, that's the thrill of my life to help people with. So don't hesitate to reach out. Feel free to, and I will gladly hop on a phone call with you or help you navigate the process.
Well, thank you so much. That's awesome. And especially to have you as a person that they can contact and help with that. So amazing. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here today. And do either one of you have any closing remarks or last things you would love to leave our audience with before we wrap up here today?
Catherine, you all are doing amazing work. You offer so much in-depth knowledge, and the quality of your work is profound. And it means the world to us to be invited to be a part of what you're doing to help clear the air about some of these complicated issues that go on with education. So thank you for standing for the truth.
Yeah, I'll just follow that and say thank you so much for having us on. We're really thrilled to be able to share this with your audience and hopefully get more teachers to come next year. I think it's a really important issue, and we're just grateful that you guys are willing to give us a platform. So thanks so much for your time.
Well, thank you both for joining and for the shout out. Was not expecting that, but thank you so much. And yeah, that's what we try to do is to research and find the truth. And sometimes the truth is uncomfortable politically for all parties. But, that's ultimately the goal is to help our educators, help our parents, and help our students, whatever that takes. So find the research, find the truth, and give it a platform. So thank you, ladies, for coming on board and doing that today with us and sharing the truth that you have found and supporting education the way that you do. So we appreciate you so much and thank you for your time.